And as we wait for the spending package to be finalized, we're starting to get some numbers indicating the sort of economic damage the coronavirus is doing to the economy. Jobless claims jumped by nearly 3.3 million people last week. That is 5 times the prior record increase. To put this in a broader perspective, we welcome now Ellen Hughes-Cromiwck. She's Third Way Senior Resident Fellow. Ms. Hughes-Cromiwck served earlier as Chief Economist of the Department of Commerce under President Obama, and before that, as Chief Global Economist for Ford Motor Company, including during that 2009 great financial crisis. She comes to us by way of Skype from Ann Arbor, Michigan. So welcome. Really good to have you with us. Give us a sense about these jobless numbers. I mean, they spiked way up, but some people say, no, we may be looking at 10 million before we're done here.
Yeah, I think this is really the heart of the crisis that we're seeing. You know, when you have a shutdown of the economy, this is way beyond what we would tend to see. This is a shock to the economy, and it's a shock to people. So we're going to see more of this, unfortunately. I think the stimulus package, and that really isn't the right word for what we've seen, but the package that was just passed is going to help, but we've got a long way to go here. Long way to go,
and it's awfully hard to know exactly what to expect, how to even get numbers around it. We had J.P. Morgan earlier today coming out and saying in the second quarter they might see GDP going down by 25%. Are these economic numbers reliable at this point? How can we know right now?
No, I think you're right, David, to point out we really don't know. I think the economic forecasters are doing the best they can under the circumstances. I mean, frankly, we've never had this kind of shutdown. And we don't know what the health consequences are as we see this ripple through, you know, various regions in the country. So these are guesses at this point. I think for all intents and purposes, you know, we're in a shutdown mode, and we've got to get beyond that. This package that they passed is going to help us.
And as you point out, first and foremost, this is a health crisis. There are people's lives on the line, which is the most important priority. We have to get past that, try to get that under control before we can really address the economy. At the same time, is the fact that this is so different from any other situation like this, could it possibly, just as a possibility, be better news for us? I mean, I heard somebody say today they've never seen a recession declared by decree, which is essentially what we've done here. We've said we're going to shut down the economy.
I don't think any shutdown, you know, whatever we want to call it, is a good thing. So right off the bat, we're in a very difficult situation. What we do know is that the Fed responded very rapidly. We have a playbook on the Fed side. They've launched these liquidity facilities. They're willing to do whatever it takes. That systematic approach from the Fed is a big positive. Now we got to turn and look to the future of shock-proofing our economy and figuring out what is our fiscal plan. We've had too many shocks. We got to get beyond that and prepare in advance.
Well, on the fiscal plan, and part of it is that $2 trillion. As you look at it, because you have had experience with this in the past, both in the private sector and in the public sector, where do we need to get the money to the fastest? What's the critical point at this point?
Yeah, you know, I remember that terrible situation we had in the financial crisis as companies just continued to lay off workers. When I was at Ford, we had to lay off thousands of workers. Look at GM, they were over 100,000 workers. That's what we want to avoid. We don't want to go through that again. That's why I think the way they put the package together to make sure that they're helping companies not lay off people, we can't go through that again. We've got to get to a point where people stay on payrolls. This wasn't their fault. So we've got to keep people on payrolls. That is critically important.
Talk about the auto industry a bit, because you know that so terribly well, having been, I think, 18 years at Ford Motor Company. It was not having a great time before this all happened. Now we see downgrades of debt. We saw Ford, your old company, actually go to junk status, a fallen angel, as it's called. Does there need to be a bailout, again, of the auto industry?
Well, I think we're going to be looking at some kind of support for many industries, and autos is certainly one of them. As we look ahead, you know, these companies are really transforming. They're moving to electrified vehicles. They're moving ahead in a very competitive world. We don't want our companies to be at a disadvantage. So I think any future help has got to really address that.
At the same time, we tend to talk to...
No,
not at all. It's great to have you with us. We tend to talk about the very large companies, the Fords, the Boeings, things like that. But an awful lot of employment in this country really comes from small and medium-sized enterprises. They can't, a lot of them, afford to keep their employees on the payroll until the government check comes. What can we do for them?
Right. I mean, they've got to get that money out as quickly as possible. You're absolutely right, David. We can't let a minute go by. This is an extremely urgent situation. We don't want to be in a position where small businesses have to lay off people because of a health crisis. That is on our watch, and we can't let that happen. So that money has got to get out very, very quickly. There's not a minute to lose right now.
You mentioned the Federal Reserve earlier and what they've done. There's part of this $2 trillion package that actually links up, as I understand it, the Treasury with the Federal Reserve. That is to say, gives the Treasury some money they can put forward to have the first risk loss, which really allows the Fed to loan a lot more money. Is that money that could be gotten out into the economy relatively quickly?
Oh, I think so. I mean, they're going to launch some Main Street lending program. Chair Powell was talking about, doing whatever it takes. They're ready to go. And I think they can get funds out very rapidly. And that's going to be critical. So the issue here right now is speed. We have a crisis. We had a shock. We got to get out very rapidly. Everybody get your running shoes on. We got to move quickly. And then we got to look ahead, and we got to say, how do we shock-proof our economy, our people, going forward? I mean, we're going to have to really take some new pages out of the book and get going on this. We can't let these shocks really debilitate our people, our workforce.
Are you encouraged by the speed shown thus far in Washington, or does it give you pause?
Well, I think, we had a little bit of a hiccup there. This is a huge package, $2.2 trillion. I mean, as an economist, who would have ever thought we'd be in this situation? I guess now we should expect that we're going to need this kind of quick support. So, yes, they turned this around pretty rapidly. As for the health support and all those actions, I can't say as an economist. I'm a little concerned that we're not maybe shutting down more, as some of the health experts suggest. We've got to really cauterize this and move ahead. So Congress is moving rapidly, and they've got to now be pivoting and thinking, what's next? Because we've got to get to a point where we have stimulus, not just a package to stem a crisis, but we're going to need stimulus ahead.
Okay, Ellen, I really appreciate you being with us today. It was truly helpful. That's Ellen Hughes-Cromiwck. She is Third Way Senior Resident Fellow.